After months of stalemate in the battle for Ukraine's eastern Donbas region, Russia has a victory to celebrate. The town of Solder has fallen to the Kremlin's forces, but the win has been brutal, bloody, constant fighting in the Kremlin, and is far from the breakthrough that Moscow claims. During the day, units of missile forces and artillery of the defense forces hit 4 control points of Russian troops, 2 artillery concentration areas, an ammunition warehouse, and 2 other important objects. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine published this information on Facebook, Ukrinform reports. The danger of air and missile strikes throughout the territory of Ukraine remains high, the General Staff added. As reported, since February 24, 2022, the defense forces of Ukraine have eliminated about 123,860 Russian invaders, and only in the past day -350 people. Today, Russian troops continue to surround Uguldar, taking up new positions. On the 4th day after the start of the assault on the Uguldar direction, Russian troops managed to completely cut off Uguldar from the road to Pokrovskoye. This, thus, complicates the process of supplying the Ukrainian military and provides an opportunity for the continuation of the encirclement of the city. The situation in the region is currently critical for the Ukrainian army, and the latter has already begun to withdraw troops deep into the city to avoid encirclement. Meanwhile, Russia is now at war against NATO and the West, and has taken the invasion of Ukraine to a different stage, a senior EU official has admitted, raising the terrifying specter of a global conflict. The game-changing deal among Western leaders to pump sophisticated tanks into the country to blast through the Kremlin's invading forces has sparked fury in Moscow, which has threatened to escalate the war beyond Ukraine's borders. Ukraine is expected to begin receiving deliveries of Western-made tanks in the coming months after the US, UK, and Germany decided to step up their support for the country amid its war with Russia. The US and Germany announced this week that they would be sending highly coveted M1 Abrams and Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine. Poland is also sending the Leopard 2 combat vehicles, while the UK announced this month that Challenger 2 tanks would be provided to Ukraine. Additional countries have committed to or at least expressed openness to delivering even more tanks to Ukraine. In theory, Russian President Vladimir Putin has a stockpile large enough that it should allow him to deploy additional tanks to the battlefield as Ukraine's own tank supplies are bolstered by the West. The Military Balance 2021 database said that Russian storage facilities had around 10,200 tanks, the Kyiv Independent reported in September 2022. But Putin's regime would be faced with several major challenges if it actually looked to deploy tanks from his stockpile to Ukraine, according to experts. Russian President Vladimir Putin and Kremlin officials have warned multiple times over the 11 months since the invasion of Ukraine started that Western interference could result in an escalation. However, the United States and other Western allies of Ukraine have repeatedly crossed Putin's supposed red lines. If the territorial integrity of our country is threatened, we will without doubt use all available means to protect Russia and our people. This is not a bluff, Putin said in September address, while the U.S. continued providing Ukraine with more armaments to fight on territory illegitimately annexed by Putin. More recently, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov provided such a warning about arming Ukraine in December. He said, "Weapon supplies continue, the assortment of supplied weapons is expanding." All this, of course, leads to an aggravation of the conflict and, in fact, does not bode well for Ukraine. Western allies have committed about 150 tanks, while Ukraine has said it needs hundreds to break Russian defensive lines and recapture occupied territory in the south and east. both Moscow and Kiev, which have relied on Soviet-era T-72 tanks, are expected to mount new ground offensives in the spring. After being promised modern tanks, Ukraine is now seeking Western fourth-generation fighter jets such as the US F-16, an advisor to Ukraine's defense minister said. Western leaders including President Joe Biden, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, French President Emmanuel Macron, and NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg have made clear their priority is to avoid direct and potentially nuclear confrontation with Russia. The Leopard 2 and Challenger 2 tanks are predicted to begin arriving in Ukraine in the coming weeks or months, while the Abrams deliveries are expected to take longer. Once Ukraine does deploy the tanks on the battlefield, the impact they will have in the war depends on how effectively they are put to use alongside other elements like artillery, other armored fighting vehicles, missiles, intelligence, and communications.
This 30, copy that. Out. 302, I